Hey, talking to myself, talking to myself. Welcome to the podcast. I know that you gon' feel Dave Sands the second, talking movies and gaming, even anime. Yeah, I might just go Super Saiyan. 242, the Bahamas, we gon' rep. Don't be anxious about nothing. Philippians 4:6. Sharing about my life, sharing about God's truth. Always keep it real when I'm talking to myself. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Talking to Myself. Hey, talking to myself. Hey, talking to myself. However, for the first time in Talking to Myself history, we are not talking to ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the first guest on the show on episode 32 in Spanish. 32, I believe it is. Yes, 32. Ladies and gentlemen, she's a friend. She's a good friend. She's a friend of the show, fan of the show. I've known her for almost 20 years. We're gonna get into her journey and her story because I don't even think she knows how amazing her journey actually is. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my good friend, my good pal, Karissa Moss, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome her in, welcome her in, welcome her in. Wow.
Pick up yourself, pick up yourself.
Oh my goodness. Karissa, how are you? How are you? Let's just start there. How are you doing on this
I
time?
am doing well. I am so happy, so excited, and I'm so honored, and I'm so proud of you to be here.
Boy. Well, I just want to say, well, first off, you know, there's only one way I could say thank you, and that is in the style of Kingsway Academy. And so I just like to say thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come on the show and to be the first guest. I'd like to present you with a virtual fruit basket token of my appreciation. And so just saying thank you off rip for being on here on this episode. And for those who may not know what this is going to be a new series on the Talking to Myself podcast called the Journey series. Essentially, what's going to be happening is I'm going to be hopefully interviewing some amazing people who have amazing journeys, kind of like looking at journeys from all aspects of their life, whether it be their Christian walk, through their career, all different aspects. And so this is really episode 1 of the Journey series, but of course, episode 32 within the life of the podcast. And so we have my good friend Karissa on the show today. And so, man, there's just so much we could get into. There's actually a lot. There is so much, and thank you once again. I wrote notes, y'all, because this is a very important episode. And so I think where I want to first start before we get into the notes is I do like a recap kind of the week, and I kind of look at life in 3 ways. I look at it like the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And so I'm gonna pass that off to you to kind of, you know, tell me how you're doing in those categories for the week: physical, mental, spiritual. How you do?
Amazing. So, let's see. So physical. So I just restarted my gym journey. That's been on pause for a real long time.
But we back though. We back.
So we back. That's what matters. We fall down, but we get back up.
Amen. Come on now.
So, yeah, physically, I've been feeling tired. Honestly, get back into it. It's been tiring, but it also feels good. Like it's a good tired, not like I'm miserable tired. And so that's been super exciting. And I have an accountability partner. So she and I go together, and that's been inspiring and a good challenger. So physically, we're pretty good. We're doing pretty good. Mentally, I would say I'm in a good mental space. It's been like, I guess we'll talk about this later, but I'm a full-time student in a graduate program.
Of course.
I feel like the default for students in graduate programs are kind of like kind of off the rail. But this has been like a good mental week. I think it's just been getting through some of that fatigue as well.
Yeah.
And then spiritually, how we feeling? Feeling good, but also aware that there's always room for growth. So I think
Exactly.
I'm in constant reminder of like, hey, I spent some time in the word today, but there should be some more time in the word. Or, hey, let me not listen to a crime podcast today and actually listen to like a spiritual podcast today.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
that's kind of been like how I've been spiritually this week.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good week to me, honestly. Getting back into the physical aspects of life, hitting the gym. Mental week is good for you. I'm really glad you had a good mental week because, through, private conversations, it can be kind of rough when you're in
Yeah.
grad school, right? And so I'm really glad you had like a good mental week. And obviously, like you said, spiritually, I mean, good. But there's always room for improvement, right? So I'm really happy that you had a really good week. That sounds really healthy.
Thank
So
you.
so I'm really
Can we
happy
hear
that.
about yours?
I mean, physically, I've actually been like tracking like for the first time, like not calories, but like workouts. So like I have like a calendar up in my room. I kind of like I write like, okay, I did like arms or I did like chest or I did like things like that. And so I mean, ever since February, like I've been hitting minimum like 5 workouts a week, which is really good for me because I was kind of like I was really not like tracking it before, and so now like
Wonderful.
your boy want to look good for the summer, and I want to get
Uh-huh.
in some physical form, so I'm kind of tracking that. So
Mhm.
so that's been pretty good. I can't complain too much about that. Mentally, honestly, it was pretty good too. I think the week went fast. I don't know how it went for you, but the week just went by so quickly, which is good because that
True.
means that I'm busy, but like it went by
And time
so
flies when you're
fast.
having fun.
Well, exactly. I mean, I don't know if you look at the calendar, but like next week is March, bro, and I'm just like,
Crazy.
what? How is it March? That doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, mentally it's been good, and spiritually, like you said, I mean, it could always be better. Still in the Word, um, almost every single day. I think maybe I missed like 1 or 2 days, like last week, maybe, but like always still hearing some form of the Word, even if it's like a verse or something. So I think
Yeah.
that's been going well. So seems like it's
Wonderful.
it's been a good week for both of us. So we do. It's been a good week for
Yes.
both of us. And so that is our mental and physical and spiritual recap, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm really glad you're doing well, Karissa. So now we gotta get into the notes because there are some things that we must know. And we're gonna start honestly from the very beginning because I don't think a lot of people know where you started in life. The only reason why I know is because I hear it from church. I hear it from like our families are close, and so I know a little bit, but I don't know everything. So I kind of want you to like tell me a little bit about like your time in England because from what I kind of understand, it's like I don't know if you were like born in England or like you were born in the Bahamas and then you went to England with your family like for a few years, then you came back. Like, just tell me like what England is like and what you remember from England. I saw some like I'm gonna say it right now, and I hope you don't hate me as a friend, but I went down in your Facebook and like don't go down there. You know what I'm saying? Don't go down there. There's some things down there that I was just like, oh, and I'm not just talking about you personally. I went down mine and I was just
I
like,
shame. I shame.
hey, don't go, ladies and gentlemen, don't go down your old Facebook. You will get shamed. But yeah, just tell me a little bit about like England and like I guess your beginnings of like, just life. What was that like? A little
Yeah. So, as a side note, literally one of the things to do on my to-do list, I have
bit.
written down like need to go through old Facebook photos and delete them. So the fact that it get to it yet and you got there before me,
Thank
I'm like,
God. Because I would have nothing here if I didn't have a Facebook. Like, bro. So okay. So yeah, I got there just in time. We did.
appreciate you asking about this because I think that part of life was a significant time of life that I don't reflect on often. So I appreciate this question.
Mm-hmm.
So context, when I was about 3 years old, my dad was working for a company in the
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas. Um, and at his company, they had offered him the opportunity to relocate to any um country, city of his choice to
Yeah.
pursue studies.
Mm-hmm.
So he chose a university in England and he decided to relocate our entire family to go to England with him. So
Oh,
at the
wow.
time, it was just my parents and me.
Mhm.
And even though this was like a long time ago, which is crazy because
Yeah.
it's like been 20 years, I
Ooh.
have a lot of vivid memories. So there's a whole kind of backstory behind how God was in the details. But like when we first moved to England, like we were
Mhm.
homeless. Like we could not find a place to stay. There were
Mhm.
certain places that wouldn't take young kids. And so we were kind of bouncing around between like hotels, dorm rooms, like
Right.
temporary housing. And then we were able to end up in like a really nice apartment that we stayed in for our whole time there. That was like 3 stories. It was overlooking the beach. I didn't even know that there were beaches in England, but we were
Wow.
in this real cute town. It was called Brighton, and God was just really in the details of everything. Like life was simple and easy. My
Mhm.
mom's dream is to be a stay-at-home mom, and so she was able to be a stay-at-home mom during the time.
Right.
And so she like just took care of me. So
Mhm.
we would go to ballet lessons.
That's what I
We would
found. Mhm.
play like go on little play dates with all the other kids. I
Mhm.
was like in a Girl Guide, like a
Continue.
little Girls Guide program. We had friends. I had friends. I was the only Black girl in my class, but everybody loved me and I loved them.
Cool.
They were always like, "We wish our hair was like yours," and I was like, "I wish my hair was like yours."
Okay.
Um, that was back then, 20 years ago. But yeah, it was a good time. And it was, yeah, really like formative time in my childhood. But one of the most significant things about England is that's where my sister was born. And
Mhm.
my mom was pregnant with my sister, but my mom got very sick during that pregnancy. So both
Wow.
my mom and my sister almost died during that childbirth process. And
What?
so it was, yeah. And I think my dad is someone that I really look up to. My mom too, of course, because she obviously went through that very traumatic experience. But for my
Yeah.
dad, he had to like still be a full-time student, still be present for classes while like he had to
Wow.
deal with like his really sick wife and his really sick child.
Mhm.
And so my sister was born premature and she was in the hospital, I think, for maybe months before she was able to be released.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of family support during that time to help us. And so that's a lot of my England memories too, just kind of wondering like, what's the outcome of my mom's health and life going to be, my
Mhm.
sister, and all things turned out for good in God's glory. So
Amen.
that's England in a
Wha-
nutshell.
Wow. See, I've heard parts of that story. I never heard that part of the story, which is crazy. Wow.
Hmm.
That's I didn't even know that, man. Well, we thank God, that everything worked out right and everything works out in His plan. Wow.
Hmm.
I mean, and
For
that's such a powerful
sure.
that's such a powerful testimony too. Like, and I think that kind of links to where you get your hard work from, because you are a hard worker, bro. Like,
Oh,
I don't even know if you know how
sad.
hard you be working. So
It's so
that's where it
sad.
came from, bro. That's
No, you're
beautiful.
kind.
No,
God is good. God is good.
but also the one part I do know about that story, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong. I I kind of remember your dad, because your dad's a pastor at our church, and he sometimes preaches about it. Like, and he has, well, yeah, way back in the day. Was that you got saved in England, like in the roof? Wasn't it like was that true? Like, can you talk about that part of the England story? Like, where was that in the timeline? All I remember is there was a roof, and you were young, and he was just like, "Do you want to accept Jesus Christ as Savior?" And you were like, "Yeah," and then we kind of moved from there.
I'm honored that you remember that detail. Honored. So, yes, I was 4 years old at the time. And like I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, we lived in a 3-story, almost kind of like a townhouse.
Of course, only
So,
the
but on the
best.
third story was kind of like the attic. And so that's where my room was. It was like a really small room in an
Hmm.
attic, like with
Hmm.
just a real small windows. Small, but I was like 4, so it didn't matter.
Right.
And there was one night that my dad came up in the room and he just shared the gospel message with me. And even though I was really young, I fully understood what he was saying, and I was able to understand and engage.
Mm.
And so he asked me if I wanted to accept Christ as my savior. And I was like, yes, yes, please. Now, granted, one of the things that he did share, I remember, is he talked about the consequence of not accepting Christ as your savior. And
Mm-hmm.
he was sharing like this concept of an eternity in hell. And as a 4-year-old, I was like, no, I don't wanna, no.
Yeah.
So I don't think I accepted Christ out of fear, but I do recognize that fear was a part of that response. And then as I grew older and I started becoming deeper in my faith, getting stronger or understanding more, then I understood like, no, like we're not supposed to be afraid to come to Christ. It's out
Right.
of love.
Mm-hmm.
Like he loves us, and the whole dynamic changed. But yes, that's how it all started.
Yeah. And I mean,
Throwback.
and truthfully, like you said, it's coming to Christ out of love, but also there is that reality of what happens if we're not saved, right? And so,
Yeah.
and I think like remember back in like Word of Life days when I think
Mhm.
it was like when we have this thing like called like storms at our church, basically like a lock-in at our church, and every time at that storm we played that one scary video. Which is just like, bro, if you don't know Christ as your savior, you are going down
Yeah.
here. And they showed like the flames, and I was just like, I
Yeah.
don't want to go. I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
I've been saved for years, and that video would still get me to this day. And so
Yeah.
I think that, I think that's an honest answer for sure. And I'm really happy that even at a young age, you were able to recognize like, hey, if I don't do this, there's a true reality that, I'm not going to be living with Christ forever in eternity. And so, I mean, that's just like, an amazing part of your journey in
Yeah.
kingdom, bro.
Yeah.
Man,
No, thank you.
like you had
Shout
just
out
like,
to God. Shout out to my dad.
like
Thank you,
shout out,
Dad.
big up Pastor Sterling for the one time, ladies and gentlemen. Pick him up. Y'all know him as Mr. Stern. I know him as Pastor Sterling. So there's two different seeds here. But yeah, you're Englander. I just had to make sure we capture that because this is where life kind of starts for you, right? And so I don't know if you remember this, but I have a very vague memory of you and your family coming back to Nassau. I don't know why, but I was outside of our church, and I think I was asking mommy or daddy, I don't know who it was. I saw you, and I didn't know who you was, right? And I was just like, who's this girl? And then I think mommy or daddy was like, she's gonna be going to your school. I was just like, okay. And so as we transition here, and I don't know if you remember this, we've actually only been technically in one elementary homeroom together. Do you remember which homeroom that is?
3GF.
DGF. Okay, that's why she's my friend, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it was 3GF. That was the first homeroom that was the only homeroom we were ever in. I mean, obviously we had class together because we were in the Accelerate program at our school, but that was like the first homeroom we were in, and that's where we truly first started this. I actually calculated the numbers, like 18, 19 years of friendship, and so that's a long time, bro.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
We also old.
We actually need to stop the recording. I was thinking like this week, like, bro, I'm gonna be like 28 this year. That's what I can't even. But like your own is like later, so like you're good. Me, I'm kind of like showing up to it. Like 28, bro. I can't even pretend like I'm young. That's not young anymore.
Well, it's young. Young is a relative term.
Well, that's true. Not like I should say like young 20s. I can't pretend like I'm in late. Like behind me is 30, and I'm just like I'm not necessarily ready for that as yet. But we move.
Be encouraged. Be encouraged.
I'm gonna try to. Thank you. But yeah, now that we're kind of like in the elementary phase of life, what do you remember from elementary days? I was trying to think about like what like impacted me. The one random memory that I remember from elementary days at K was like square dancing. I literally thought about this the other day.
With Mr. Cunningham.
Right, exactly. I couldn't remember his name as a PE teacher, right? And so it was basically like, for those who don't know, I mean, obviously, K has, like every school has physical education, right? for some reason, I think it was maybe grade 6, maybe grade 5, 3 to 6, one of those times, right? We did square dancing, and so I remembered vividly. It was like, honor your partner, and you better honor that corner over there. And boy,
True.
did I honor that corner when we had to honor that corner. That was like a weird memory that I had. What is like some of your favorite memories from like elementary days, if you could recall, like outside the Jonas
Ooh.
Brothers?
Mm. Yeah, there was a Jonas Brothers concert. There was a Miley Cyrus concert.
Oh,
This may sound kind of n- not fun,
okay.
but
Okay.
for somehow all of my elementary memories are all like the traumatic ones. And so I'm trying not to, man, I'm trying to, keep it positive. But
Okay.
like, say for example, I remember being in 5th grade and we had to do the hurdles.
Okay.
Do you remember when they put like the long tape across the fields and we were
Uh-huh.
supposed to jump over the
And you fell.
and sprain my arm?
Why did I remember that? Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Dang.
Or I kind of remember, I guess
Wow.
this is more like lighthearted, but a lot of like the Gossip Girl culture. So like the
Mhm.
girls with the long hair, we used to be like, "Ooh, you got weave under your bed, and
Oh
you probably put weave in
no.
your hair." Or like the secrets were like some of the girls didn't know how to put on their socks properly, and so like there were like secrets of like, "Oh, mom still puts on my socks for me in the morning." I mean, this was my elementary school reality. I don't know.
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't know. I remember a lot of piano lessons, a
Oh
lot of piano,
yeah. Yeah.
and being really nervous for those exams. Um,
Trinity
are we
Guildhall,
talking
ladies and gentlemen.
school specifically? Or are we talking outside of school or just
We
school?
we can go outside the realm, just keep it in like grade 3 to grade 6, and then we'll jump to like high school after.
Okay. I remember a lot of like family vacations. Did you go on the 4th grade trip to Fort Lauderdale?
No, no, you did. I was so mad. I want to go on that, bro. I know. Was
Sorry,
it lit? It was fun. No, you good. You good. You good. I'm still
we went
recovering
to
from it.
Wanna
Um,
City, where kids gonna do what they want to
but
do.
kids do. I want to go. That's so bad. They used to advertise that so much back in the day, bro. And I didn't get to do what I want to do.
Did you do
Dang.
any school trips?
I did like I
The
think
Family Island one?
no. Well, in grade
You went
6,
to
yeah.
Lucero?
Yeah, I didn't like that. No, but because like remember we had to go in the water and then the rays were like all around surrounding me. And
I threw up.
I don't what?
Yeah,
What?
grade
From
3
the
just
boat
threw up.
ride?
The motion sickness.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean this is reality, man.
Dude, it was the rays, bro. Like I don't know how I felt about like surrounded by these aquatic animals and they were just like flapping up the whatever their fin is at you and they
I'm
wanted us
dead.
to like take a group photo. Like as soon as we took whatever photo we had to take, I ran out of that water, bro. That was not the life for me. And then that's why I'm an accountant today, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't go into technology for a reason. But no, like I mean those days were such simpler times. Such
Yeah,
simpler times, bro.
yeah.
Great. It's like it's crazy how far that is now, right? Like that's like from what I see, like grade 3 to like grade 6, like 2005 to 2008, bro. There's no
Like what
you're
even
in
are those years?
like and that's what I'm
Like you
saying.
make
Like
the throwback to 2005.
gosh, it's just like I don't even know what I was trying to like do back then. Like that seems like such a different life now that we're in
Hmm.
2024, right? But like I mean that's what life is. It's just like this progression of like moving forward and this like just kind of going through life. Like it's just crazy. But as we continue to progress through life, we're now in high school. This is where Facebook opens its doors to the world. And so as I said, I went down that thing. I went back to 2009, and so I found some quotes from yourself and me. I'm gonna first start with me, just so I can embarrass myself first, so we can kind of get comfortable. Okay, so
That, that's
on
fine.
so on in 2009. right? The only thing that were on my Facebook were literally like Farmville and Petville
Oh,
posts. It
you were
was
one of
just,
those?
oh, I was one of those. You couldn't tell. I had the best farm. I was just like, and I think Facebook was had like a thing where it's just like, if you like share something on your post, you get like more energy to play the game. So I was just like, yes, yeah, leveled up. I was just like, okay, that's kind of fun.
That was the
Then
stuff.
it was though. Like that's when games were fun, man. Like these kids don't know about no Farmville, bro. Gotta take
No.
care of your crops. You gotta like people used to like back in the day, like skip work to like water their crops. Apparently, we were still in school, but like that's how good Farmville was. Oh, such a good game.
True.
April 6th, 2010. I said I'm back. Back from what? What was I doing on April 6th, 2010? No likes, by the way.
Oh,
No, zero engagement. 2000.
sorry.
It was a rough life for young Dave, bro. Like no likes. December 19th, 2011. Night FB. No one cared. No one said good night back. Still zero likes. Yeah, it was a tough time.
Were we even liking back then?
We were. I mean, your thing was popping. You were popping. I still had some growing to do. But we moved. This is the worst one I found online. November 13th, 2011. You remember like those things like where it's just like my status. And I'll leave like
This.
yeah, I'm gonna rate you. I'm a By the way, you were popping back then. Still popping now, but you were on that thing. Like everything.
I was not. Your definition of popping is like 3 people.
Dude, I'm telling you, when you used to post that on your story, bro, you had like, excuse me, on your like status or whatever on Facebook, you had like 15 things you had to do. That was a lot of work. But I said on November 13th, 2011, turn-ons, I was just like, okay, that's still out there. Turn-ons, girls with swag and good personality.
Okay.
Zero likes. I was just like, girls with
You were
swag.
honest.
Girls with swag. I was just like, Dave, what are you doing? What are we trying to accomplish here? And I used to say swag all the time, bro.
All of
in
us
everything. It was bad.
Pop above the bed and we used to turn our swag on.
I mean,
That was-
that line's still cold to this day. I don't that boy hot. I still be doing that. It's just like when I like say all this foolishness on my status, it's just like, it was cringe. But anyway, circling back to you, right? This is one of my favorite ones that I found. December 17, 2009. This is what you quoted. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. First of all, when did you become a rapper? That's number one. And when are we getting that album? Because it's been a couple years since the album dropped. You were dropping some heaters on here, bro.
I do remember that.
That was a bar. You got a couple likes on that. I don't have the like count down, but you got engagement for that. That was hard.
That's hilarious.
That's just like I didn't know you had that in your bag, bro. That was kind of tough. That's definitely from Tumblr.
That's hilarious. It was not my original words, but
it was
I had the gift
so
of
tough though.
Copy and paste.
Boy, did we all. I think one of my other favorite things you used to do on your Facebook is just like, for example, so like you would have to read it like Karissa Moss, and then it's like you'd say something like is tired of exams. I was just like,
Yes.
It was just like Karissa Moss is on Christmas break. I was just like, oh, she's just like she on you in 2024
It used
with
to
that.
have like prompts, and it used to say like, "What are you doing?" or something. So I guess I just used to.
Bro, you in your duffel.
Ooh.
You were in your bag, bro. I gotta say that was tough. I enjoy. I don't go down there. Like I said, it's a little rough down there in the streets, but don't go. But it was fun. It was fun.
Woo!
It's a that was something. But there was one thing I wanted to ask you about, and I feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna keep saying that a lot, by the way. But I remember a point, and I hope this doesn't like embarrass you in any way, but I remember at one point your name on Facebook was Karissa, middle name, because confidentiality, I mean, we don't need to put all your business in there. Karissa middle name, I know that thing. Carter, right? And
Yeah,
obviously, and what
I
was the
was
Carter
mad.
for? The Carter was for
I used to have a Lil Wayne
crush.
obsession.
Excuse my
I
charisma, she
totally
says.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Totally forgot about that.
But that's not to
Totally.
embarrass you. That's not to
Mhm.
embarrass you in any way. I just remember that phase in your life
That's
so vividly.
hilarious.
But I say that to say,
That's
I may be
hilarious.
jumping a little ahead here, but I feel like in your life, and I think I could say this very confidently, you were like one of the first friends that I like, you were just like really showing your love for God at a really early age, like regardless of the Carter age, like like you were like tweeting verses from that time. And I feel like from what I've seen from your social media, there was a shift from 2013 to 2014 where you just really like dove headfirst into your faith. Can you tell me about like what might have changed you during that time to like really just say, hey, I'm gonna stand up for Christ. I'm gonna put these verses on my wall. I'm gonna let people know like, hey, um, I'm really for this Christian lifestyle. Like, what do you remember during that time that like made you like shift like completely? Because your shift was amazing and you've been rooting Christ from since day one. So I just kind of want to know a little bit about that.
Oh, I really appreciate that question. I also appreciate the analysis of my social media because I have to go back and do that for myself because that's like, whoa, that's a really good question. So I okay, so throwback. So maybe you referenced it earlier, talking about some of the lock-ins that we used to do. So STORM was one of them. It stands for Sending Teens Out to Reach the Masses. And there was another one that we used to do called Super Bowl.
Woo!
The Super Bowl used to be from like 8 p.m. to 6 a.m.
That was it.
Friday night to Saturday morning,
Mm-hmm.
where they would give out like these TVs and these cell phones and all these really grand prizes.
Boy, that was a time. Mm-hmm.
So starting off then I think I was maybe about 12 or 13, and someone had preached the gospel message, but they had preached it in a way that I had never heard it before.
Sure.
And I had decided to rededicate my life to the Lord then. And I just wanted my life to actually be meaningful in a way where it aligned with, I say I'm a Christian and I'm living like a Christian. So I made that commitment at 12, and then it got a little wonky after that with high school pressure because
Absolutely.
there's a lot of like peer pressure. You get
Yes.
distracted easily. You're focused on like, I like this person. Is this person like me? You're trying to work through studies, all these things. So I would say probably up until like 2013, 2014, which is probably like grade 11, grade 12. I think it was just like a slow progression of I'm really trying to live out this rededication and this commitment that I made at
Yeah.
12. And I'm always reminded success is not a linear process, but
Right.
it's
Mm-hmm.
coastery. So
Yes.
I think what that was yeah, like I'm dedicated to the Lord, and then I'm in a little weed phase and listening to music I shouldn't be listening to, and then coming back up to, okay, no, I'm not Karissa Carter. I'm just Karissa Moss, and I'm all in this time. So I think it was just a part of that. I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down. So that was probably a phase where I was up per se.
Right.
Um, and then another, I think, spiritual milestone I could think about around that time is in 2013, there was a group of teens that came from Bermuda, and they partnered with our church,
Yeah.
and we ran like a vacation Bible school together that summer, and it was just 10 days, but I was really inspired by seeing different people. Some were from the US, some were from Bermuda. We were all like teens,
Yeah.
and everybody was just kind of like all in when it came to their faith, and they really inspired me. Like they
Yeah.
were coming into our neighborhoods, evangelizing to people that I would never do. And so I
Right.
was just kind of like, huh, you guys I kind of like you guys.
Y'all all
And I
right,
think
yeah.
that too also kind of relit the spark. So by the time they
Mm,
left, I think I was even more motivated because I don't think I was seeing maybe other people around me as passionate about their faith. And then I think, well, besides you, of course, like, I
no, but
was
no, but no,
by you.
but me back then, no, no, no. You for sure though. You for
No,
sure were like you were like repping. You don't
but
don't
I
even you
think
don't even have to include me in that. You were repping. You were in
I
my
appreciate
one of my
that.
inspirations back in the day for sure.
No, you're kind, you're kind. But I think, yeah, I think they helped to light a spark too. And after they left, I was just kind of like, there's no going back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to, I figured I had like hundreds of friends. Why not evangelize them? Like, why am I logging onto Facebook a day and not saying anything about Christ? I think was that mindset around that time.
Yeah.
And so I was going to post about this. Like, let me make sure I post the scripture first, and then I could post about other things. So I think that was my frame of mind at the time.
Absolutely. And like you said, like when I just from like, I mean, obviously we're posting for a long time, but in those 2 years, like, I mean, verse after verse after verse after verse, game, just long game for free, by the way, just letting y'all know. And you were just so like, you weren't afraid to do that. And I think that's a real testimony, obviously to the person that you are, but it's also a testimony to, other young kids, right? I mean, obviously we had pressures back in the day, but social media is a totally different game in today's society, right? Like literally everywhere is a distraction, right? And so
Mm,
like we dealt with our own pressures when we were in high school back in our day, but like for the kids nowadays, like it for the person listening at home, that teen girl listening at home right now, like who's trying to do what you did, but is so scared that she's not gonna get followers on TikTok, or she's not gonna get
mm.
millions of followers on Instagram, or she's not gonna have the most YouTube subscribers. Like, what would you tell her in order to stay strong in what she wants to do if she wants to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah. Um, so the first thing I would say is it's a verse that you and I both love.
Mm-hmm.
If it has not changed, I knew it to be your favorite verse at a point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a verse that says, "For God has not given us a spirit of
Spirit of
fear,
fear. Mm-hmm.
but He's given us a spirit of power and of love and of sound mind." So when you
Second
really
Timothy.
step back and meditate on that verse, it's like anytime we experience fear, it does not come from God. Fear is normal to feel, but
Right.
the root of that fear is not from God. Like instead of fear, He gives us um power and
Power,
a spirit of
love,
love and a sound mind.
mind.
So I think the motivation to that teen girl or anyone or even adult me, like sometimes I have to go back to teen me to encourage adult
Get back
me.
to basics. Yeah.
Literally, and I think that's why scripture says something along the lines of like experience your faith like a childlike faith or go back to being a child.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, I have to sometimes like let the little child lead them, like
Yeah.
let teenage you lead yourself as an adult, because I have to constantly remind myself to not be fearful, especially when you want to share your faith. So that would be my encouragement. Like you have to scripture talks about the transformation of the mind in Romans 12. So you have
Mm.
to like forcefully transform your mind. So this makes me fearful or this makes me feel this way, but
Yeah.
I'm trusting the Lord to replace that feeling with power and love and a
A
sound mind.
sound mind, right? It's kind of like
Hmm.
it's like recognizing that there is fear, right? Recognizing like,
Hmm.
okay, I am scared. And I think for me that allows me to like attack fear in like kind of a logical way. Like, okay, I am scared to share my I am scared to do this thing. I am scared to like um post this episode, whatever it may be, I am scared, right? So getting
Mm.
that initial emotion out and then saying, all right, what does the word say? Going back to what
Yep.
I know, what I read in the Bible, right? And so you kind of like summed it up perfectly, like understanding that it is fear, but then going back to what you know in this Bible
Hmm.
allows you to get past that fear, you know?
Yeah.
And even like again,
100%.
like one of my other favorite verses, Philippians 4 verse 6. Don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition for thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Even just listening to that verse, and I call these verses, like even when you said like 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, which was one of my favorite verses way back when, and still is, call these my anxiety verses. Like those are some of the most helpful verses to me that I've been carrying along in this thing I call life. So I'm so happy that you brought 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. Ooh, such a
Yeah.
powerful verse.
And if I can add to that,
You better add. Yes,
I was
please.
scrolling through my Bible app quickly so if I could see if I could pull up the right verse so I don't misquote anything.
This is why we have her on, ladies and gentlemen.
Stop.
Keep it going. Give me some game.
But there's a verse in John 10. I think it's John 10:10, and it says, "A thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come so that, like, essentially they may experience abundant life," right? And so I also have to think about the concept, and recently I've been reminding myself about this a lot, that like the enemy's goal or Satan's goal is to steal, kill, or destroy from us and others. And like the Lord has wanted to give us the complete opposite of that, which is abundant
Right.
life or life to the full. So when we allow fear to control our decisions, I think that links with, we've been like, the thief has come and stolen or killed or destroyed because we're hindering something that could benefit anybody. And I think that when we evangelize or share our faith or post a video or do anything significant, I think we ultimately want to expect this grand reward. But sometimes we take for granted the fact that maybe we're just here to sow seeds. Like our goal might just be to plant a seed, to do something minor. You know the parable with the 4 stages, like there's somebody who comes and scatters the seeds, and then there's somebody who comes and like harvests or something. I need to go back to my parables, and so I could have been more articulate about it, but it's the same concept. Like sometimes we're not here to like be the stage 4 or the end stage. Sometimes we're just called to be the little seed dropper along the way.
Yes, and I think that's something. No, and that's something important to recognize, because before I thought it was my job to do the saving. Like, when you want to share your faith to someone who doesn't know God, I was just like, okay, I gotta save this person, bro. So I gotta dig up X amount of verses. I gotta quote everything. Okay, John 3:16, here, the whole shebang, every single thing, right? But I think it's really important what you said, that it may just be our responsibility just to leave a seed. And we've done our job. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful thing. Like, and even in that case, like, we still don't have the ability, we can't save anybody.
No.
Only God could save, right? Only God has the power to change a heart, to change a mind. And so even if we are in like the parable that you mentioned, even if we are stage 4, that still wasn't us, right?
Yeah.
That was still 100%. God doing the saving. So I'm really happy that you brought that up. Oh, that's something that I had to be reminded of. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Amen.
Ooh, see, this is why you're on, because you got game, bro. Exactly. Oh my goodness. Oh,
you're kind.
Oh my goodness. This is a full sermon. We can go to Sunday lunch after this for sure. But wow, I love how we went from KA straight into the word. That's beautiful. But before we move off of KA and Facebook, one last thing I bring about, okay, maybe like 2 minutes. One thing that I want to bring up is that I don't know if you looked at this in a while, but you actually have a verse in your Facebook profile. Do you remember what that verse is?
Yeah. Yes.
It's New Testament. It's New Testament.
Yeah. Yeah.
New Testament.
It's I literally check Facebook once a year, but
I only use it for birthdays, so you're good.
No,
you're good.
If you start it, I can finish it.
Okay, I have a different version.
Ooh, it's from Hebrews. Have ooh, it's holding firm to the faith I profess, for he who promised is faithful.
Yeah, yep. That might be a different version. Holding unswervingly to the faith I profess, for he who promised is faithful.
I gotta put that in my Instagram bio. I need to switch that over.
Yes, we gotta bring that over. We gotta move to social media.
Thanks for that.
Of course. Hey, I gotta research this stuff, right? Would you say? I don't know if you remember when and why you put this verse as I guess your main status on your Facebook. But is this your favorite verse? Do you remember why you kind of chose this as like, hey, this is the verse I want people to see when they think of Karissa Moss? You know, is there any reason behind you chose that specific verse?
A great question. So I wouldn't say that's my favorite verse. I would say my favorite verse is probably what I shared earlier, the 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. But power and love is on mine. This verse, I think, so I spoke about it earlier briefly, but in high school, I felt like I had wonderful friends. I had wonderful community. If any of them listen to this, I love you all dearly.
She does.
But I really do. But I think that the disconnect was I was searching for friendships that had more spiritual depth and connection.
Yeah.
And I feel like at that time, I feel like me and some of my friends were just on different wavelengths.
Sure.
And I think Bahamian society and culture in general is very much like everybody goes to church on Sunday and then we do whatever we want to say and do on Monday.
Sure.
And I think I always kind of felt like the odd one out because everybody always kind of labeled me as like too churchy, or a lot of my friends and peers were having experiences that I was not having because of how I was feeling about my faith. I had decided to not drink or to not be sexually active or to not smoke or to not party. And I feel like a lot of people were in other spaces.
Right.
And that was just like I had friends, but I also felt disconnected.
Yeah.
And so I think that in that season, the only thing that I was connecting to was like my faith itself. And so I think I just kind of I would do like daily devotions where I would just go to a different part of the Bible each day to always kind of mix it up. And I think I was just encountering a lot of different verses.
Right.
So at that time, I think that verse really stood out because I was really pursuing or trying to pursue holding firm to the faith that I profess.
Yeah.
And I feel like one thing that we all have to work on, including myself, is if I'm going to say I'm a Christian, I have to live it. Like I really have to.
That's not
We
easy.
can't just keep talking the talk and not walking the walk, right?
Walk,
And we want to do that in every other aspect. Like in our relationships, if someone says that they love you, you want them to prove it. Like at your job, if you work hard, you want to get paid for working hard. So
Right.
it's the same thing with our faith. Like if you profess to be Christian, like you really have to strive to live the life of what scripture tells us a Christian looks like.
Right.
And I just think that's where my headspace was at the time. I really want to hold firm to this faith. And he who promised is faithful. Like that's true. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. That was like what, 10 years ago? So I think it's really interesting to think about who you were then, who you are now, and
Right.
all the things that shaped your experience. So I appreciate your question.
That's why we're doing the journey. There's just so many things you go through in life, and like you mentioned earlier, life is not linear, right? Especially in this Christian life. I mean, you going up and down and all around. Sometimes you feel like you're like absolutely following the Lord's will, and sometimes you feel so far from God, and it's just like navigating those different seasons, right? Time and seasons for everything, like in Ecclesiastes, right? And so, I mean, kudos to you for standing like during that time, bro, especially as a teen. Oh my goodness, that must have been so difficult for you. But hey, look where you are now. Look where God has brought us. You know what I mean? Beautiful. Oh,
Amen. Hallelujah. No, all God, not none me.
boy, but there's just so much more. And like we continue on. Okay, so before we get into like your college, university life, there's an important question. And I've asked this question to you so many times, and there's so many people that went to Kingsway, and I gotta get this on the record. Probably the second most important question that I'm gonna ask you. What was your favorite lunch at Kingsway?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
before you answer, Karissa, I love Kingsway lunch. I will profess that to the day I die and I'm walking them golden streets in heaven. I love
Yep.
Kingsway lunch. It was the best lunch that I had, still wanted to this day, right? Let me paint the scenario. Monday lunch, chicken sandwich and fries. Tuesday lunch, I think it was pepper pork chop. That was really good. Wednesday, from what I recall, it would usually be some wings and fries. Gotta go back to the fries. Thursday was tilapia, and maybe even curry. And then Friday was that good pizza, boy. From Domino's or what they got from Super Value, but hey, they made that.
Yeah.
So, what was your favorite lunch? So I get that on record, and now, of course, I'm gonna say mine. I think everyone knows mine. But what's yours? What's your favorite?
On the record, I kind of had two, but the
Okay.
main one on the record was the chicken sandwich.
Ah,
Monday chicken
yes.
sandwich. Yes, that was the best lunch. And then I liked to take the fries, and we used to put all the ketchup packets in the fries.
And shake it up. I remember that.
Yeah, that was number two. It was shaking up
Boy.
ketchup fries.
I remember those, bro. And y'all used to shake them things up. Like those 2 packs of ketchup used to spray. What? Like, why didn't we get more? I guess it was before that, but whatever. But yeah. And I have to agree. Favorite lunch?
It was the chicken sandwich. Yeah.
After a hard, I think, and this was like AT days, with AT stands for advanced track, for those who may not know, that's what the program me and Karissa were in. I think it was like after a long, day of English, English and vocab, and you just need something bad for your body that kind of like attacks your heart just a wee bit, not too much where you get concerned, like that chicken sandwich, buddy. And the fries. And you had that, listen, I used to get that with a blue bird and give me 50-cent mint. I was good for the rest of the day. I was full. My breath was good. We was moving, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But I mean, them Kingsway, and the lunch was good. I mean, them Kingsway days went by so quickly. I mean, like, obviously, happily still remain friends for so many years. But that was just such a different time, man. Like, oh my goodness, what a time! Time flies when you're truly having fun. But
and if I can also quickly add,
please do.
I would also like to say that despite all the like scripture posting and daily Bible reading and trying to frame my faith and share it, there were also a lot of hard times, a lot of struggles, and a lot of falling short. And I think that's important too, like when we think about our faith. And I think, again, it's a roller coaster experience. So high school also, like we're talking about the high parts, but high school is also like, whoo.
There's some lows in there, for sure.
Yeah, so just adding that.
No, and I think it's important to recognize that, right? I really think the world misconcepts the idea of Christianity. Like, we are these perfect people. Like, bro, and you know, we've had numerous personal conversations. You already know how imperfect I am, right? And kind of like that vice versa. So we know that we're not perfect. It's God that we're saved, and He perfected us through His sending His Son to die on the cross. We're not perfect through ourselves, but we're perfect through Him. And so I think I'm glad you brought that up. It's really important to recognize that the Christian life, and the walking in faith is not easy. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have lows, and very low lows, by the way. And those lows could last for like long periods of time. A long time, right? Like months, like a year, 2 years, like very long seasons of lows. But that's really where faith comes in, no? Like, understand, like, And I've been in many situations, and I'm pretty sure yourself included, where you're just like trying to figure out like, God, what are you doing? I mean, I've been angry at God, and all those different things, but just trusting in Him to get you through that. I've learned in this life that He will get you through whatever you're getting through, and I'm sure you experienced that as well. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Very,
Amen.
very, very, very important. Come on. I tell you, we're gonna have a good conversation. I tell you that before we start recording. We are. But now I want to get into post-secondary education, as Google calls it, post-secondary education. So, right. Originally, now I was gonna bring this up later, but you have a track record. And I brought this track record to you so many times. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to present the Karissa Moss track record, right? Karissa has a track record of saying that something is not going to happen, that she's not going to accomplish something, but then she accomplishes it. But not only does she accomplish it, but she does it to like the highest level. And, it's just kind of you have those people in your life who just like, why do you keep doing this to me? Like every single time you go through something, there's a struggle, but yet, I did this thing again, by the way. And I'm just like, again, your track record, I brought this to you many times. And so I say your track record to say, from what, and I believe this is correct, you went to Taylor University second, correct? In your post-secondary education. So that means you started somewhere first. So can you tell me a little bit of your UB days? I don't know if it was called UB then. College of the Bahamas Days. Your College of the Bahamas Days, and kind of navigating this idea of like, okay, I thought I was going to be away in school. I thought I was going to be, kind of doing what I see like friends doing where they're going off. Can you tell me what College of the Bahamas was like, and how you kind of navigated that journey as you were trying to figure out like, okay, what is kind of next for Karissa during that time?
Yeah, another really fantastic question.
I told you research. I told you.
Yeah, no, and I just want to say I knew none of these questions beforehand. So I applaud you for these beautiful questions.
These are off the dome.
So it all ties into what we were talking about. Even though I knew God has not given us a spirit of fear, He's given us one of power and love and a sound mind. Yeah. Now that it was time to apply it to a real world scenario, I couldn't. And I allowed fear to control my decision. So I was in this headspace where I knew that the Lord had called me to go to Taylor University. I knew that was where I was supposed to go.
Right.
But I just was like, I can't do this. Like all of the unknowns were too overwhelming. The finances weren't financing, like things weren't adding up. And if I had gone straight from high school to Taylor, it would have been a big, big faith jump that I just didn't have the faith to jump. And so when my parents saw like me mid-panic attack, considering the idea of like leaving home and moving to college and doing all these things,
right?
They were like, no, sis, no. So we decided that the middle ground would be UB, COB. I try it for a semester, or a year, and then transition to Taylor. And that ended up being maybe the best thing, maybe not the best thing. I don't know. But I had class 4 days a week. And actually, you know what? God was in the details. So UB, back then, COB, used to have this they used to have this big group chat.
Right.
Where everything used to be really honest. Or it was like a big Facebook group. And you could look up like a certain professor or a class and figure out who's the best professor for this class. And people would always be like, don't take this person, don't take this person. And they'd say who the best professors were. But in order for you to get the best professors, you would literally have to be like the first to register. And registration was like the Hunger Games. So it was like, it was a really chaotic time. But I don't know, it was one day me and my mommy went on CLB's campus. And I don't know who we talked to, but God was there and God allowed, somehow it all worked out. So I was able to register early. So because I was able to register early, I got into all the best classes with all the best professors.
Wow.
So like I never had to go through the Hunger Games horror stories that a lot of people share when they talk about CLB in the past. So
Mhm.
that was the blessing. The hard part was I felt very lonely. My two best friends from high school were there. So I had their company all the time
Mhm.
and that was really helpful. But it was just a really mundane season because I would go from class, home, church on Sunday, and that was it. Like I had no life outside of class and church. And like
Jeez.
you said, it was also this weird space because I was watching all of my other friends leave and go to their universities. Like I was watching your media posts and you in Canada living your best life. And I think that was around the time when you was dancing to Uptown Funk You Up. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to share that
No, you
information.
can share that. I was a killer back then, for sure.
You became like an on-campus celebrity, and I'm just home
Oh,
and I'm scrolling through and I'm just like, I feel so. So
oh, jeez.
it was a mundane season, and it was also a season of like trying not to let my jealousies take over.
Right.
Um, but it was also what I needed. I needed that step up. I needed that transition. I needed that this is what college is like. And I also needed that time because it helped a lot by the time I got to Taylor.
Mhm.
I knew what it was like to be home. So I knew, okay, I did UB or I did my time there. I knew it wasn't a good fit for me. So I'm gonna work even harder to go away and
Wow.
stay and do the best that I can.
Mhm.
And also, um, I had one elective, so I was a bio major. So I had like a math and English class, a bio class, a chem class. But we had one elective. And the one elective class I had was called Intro to Health. And the
And you
professor that taught
in college and COB.
in College of the Bahamas,
Gotcha.
at the time, it was the only like just health related course they had. Everything else was like biochem. But that class, that professor had a MPH degree. And I think she was the one that started sowing the seeds to me. I guess we'll talk about that later about a master in public health.
Right.
And yeah, I really think it's because of her, that class. That was one of my big, like, first step into what I'm been walking through for the last 10 years when it comes to my career. So it ended up
Mhm.
actually working out
Oh,
really well.
yeah.
And yeah, God is good.
Wow. Okay. Um, one question. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so that is where I was going to ask you because I didn't know who your inspiration was for just like your career, right? Because I was thinking about like your family. I was just like, okay, is there someone in your family that kind of went down this path? But no, it was actually a professor, which is
No, I, no. The
no, 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 no.
inspiration,
Okay.
I think, like, I don't, it's one of those things where, so I'm a public health professional, contact, and the field of public health, like I'm only, it's literally like God called me to it. Like the inspiration
Wow.
almost came from him himself,
Hmm.
and little things happened along the way that kept leading me down the path, but like it was
Mm.
still all like it was almost like a direct
It's like spiritual
revelation,
alignment. Yeah.
if that
Okay.
makes sense. And I
Hmm.
could share a little bit about that only if you want me to, because
This
we
is
can.
your episode. Yes, please. Yes, exactly. This is your story. Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll make it brief. So throwback, as a kid, I always wanted to be a doctor. Um, then when I got to high school, I realized I hated chemistry, I hated physics, and the
Same.
only part of biology I liked had to do about the human body.
Okay.
But remember in grade 7 and 8, we used to have health science?
Yes. Oh,
So I loved health science. I didn't like biology classes, but I literally loved health science.
mm-hmm.
So, but after grade 8, there was no health science. Everything was like biology. So I was like, what
Chemistry,
do I do
physics.
with
Yeah.
this like?
Right.
So then when I got like grade 11, grade 12, both me and my dad got ill and we had to go to the US at a hospital for treatment.
Right.
And I used to like sit in the hospital and I used to be like, oh my gosh, I love being here. Like I just love the atmosphere of the hospital. I know it's real weird. It's real
Wow.
weird. But
Okay.
I didn't want to be a doctor or a nurse. So I was like, what do you do if you like love the hospital, but you don't want to be a doctor or a nurse? So
Right.
the wheels were churning, but I didn't know how to like place a term on it. So then I got to UB, took that intro to health class. The wheels kept turning. I was like, yeah, I like this. I like this. But, and at the time, I didn't know the professor had an MPH. She just taught a health class.
Right.
So I was, okay, I like this, but I don't know what to do with this. I got to college, Taylor University, and I was supposed to meet with my advisor. I was a bio major at Taylor. So I was supposed to meet with my advisor. And she sat me down one day and she was like, tell me what you want to do with your biology degree after you graduate. And I literally heard like a voice tell me, tell her you want a master of public health. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I
Wow.
didn't research it. Like I didn't even, I knew nothing.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay. And I was like, I want a master of public health. And she was like, oh, did you know that we have a public health program here at Taylor? And I was like, there's no way. Because I had searched the website up and down, looking for a major.
And
I
there was
had
nothing
never seen
there.
anything about public health.
Wow.
So that's how I transitioned into it. So it was literally like just a, I don't know, do you call it a direct revelation? I don't, it wasn't me.
That's what we're calling it tonight for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Okay, so it was just like literally a direct message from the Lord, like, hey, you're gonna do
Or
public
like
health
a
in.
guiding. Like
Yeah,
sometimes you can feel how the Lord guides you sometimes. So
right.
I just kind of felt his guide.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, I did my little bit of study about public health because
Oh,
I didn't know what it was, and I'm sorry, I used to make jokes like you're gonna be a doctor, and in what I research is that's not true. That's not what public health is. So through my research yesterday, I did. Public health, by definition, is the art and
uh-huh.
science of preventing
Yes.
disease,
Hmm.
prolonging life, promoting health through organized efforts and informed choices of society, orgs, communities, and individuals. That's the book definition. But the way I finally understand like what public health is through like this example. It's like this cliff analogy. I can't remember like the person that said it on the video, but it was really helpful. So imagine there's a cliff, yeah, and so let's just say the cliff represents good health in the society, right? I walk on the cliff, I fall off that bad boy, I break my leg, right? And so good the since there's good health in the society and I broke my leg, then an ambulance will pick me up, I'll go to a doctor, I'll get my leg fixed, blah blah blah. What public health is saying that okay, it's great that we have these ambulance that can pick me up and can and take me to the doctor and those things. Public health says, what are some ways we could prevent me from falling off that cliff in the first place, right? Am I on the right track?
100% you're there.
Right. So it kind of said how like, okay, what are some things you could have done to prevent that? Okay, you could put a fence in front of the cliff. You could put a gate in front of the cliff. You can put a sign that says, watch out, you'll fall off, all these different things. And so from all the videos that I listened to, public health is about prevention. That's what
Yeah.
it is. It
Yes.
prevents things from happening. And
I'm
so
so pleased.
when I kind of realized that, I was like, oh, you guys are kind of like the first line of defense, if you will, right? The doctors and the pharmacists are just like after the thing kind of got through, if you will, the doctors are there gonna like fix your leg. The pharmacist is gonna give you the
The
medication
medicine.
that you need, right?
Right.
The public health specialist is trying to prevent all that from happening through
In the first place.
research and policies and all those different things. That's when I
Yeah.
started to get excited about this thing because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a job we're doing.
Welcome. Welcome to the fan club.
Listen,
Woo.
so now I kind of have an understanding of what public health is. And then as I dove deeper in my brain, I thought COVID. I was just like, oh my gosh. So in the first instance, as I'm talking to, I'm just calling you a public health professional because that's what you are. You're almost finished your master's degree. Congratulations, by the way.
Good.
But ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking to the future Ministress of Public Health from the Bahamas. I don't know if that's an actual title name, but that's kind of the title I gave for you. So I think
Thank you.
I think some questions I want to ask you is when it comes to COVID, and I know I didn't prep you for some of these questions, so if it's a big question,
Okay.
please. Do you think there was anything that this world could have done to prevent COVID from happening? Like we didn't see it from anywhere. I believe it started in China and then it came to the US and then eventually hit the Bahamas. But in your professional opinion, was there anything the world could have done to prevent COVID-19 from happening in any way? Like, was there anything at all?
It's a great question, right? So I think it all goes back to, it's kind of a big question because
It is.
we have to ask ourselves, what was the source of COVID? And to this day, I think the source of COVID is still debated. So the definition that they had told us was that I think there was a bat that got loose, started biting people or something in a market in China. That's what they told us.
Right.
So if that's the truth, then you can say, okay, well, there should have been some regulations in place that, you know, protect people from getting bit from bats and, I guess, vaccinating your bats, if you can consider that. I mean, that stuff. But then there's also a field called like bioterrorism, which is what I think other people are starting to say happened as a source of COVID, where it was like designed in a lab and it was purposely made to hurt us. There's a lot of controversy out there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So do I think that COVID could have been avoided? No, because, and COVID itself came from different, like there was something that kind of looks like COVID before COVID happened. There was,
like
I think it was like SARS-CoV-1. Like a couple years ago, there was like a outbreak called like SARS-CoV-1. And then the COVID we know was like SARS-CoV-2.
Gotcha.
So there's nothing new under the sun, right? That's what Ecclesiastes says. So I think as the world kind of continues in the way that it will continue, yeah, there's going to be some diseases like COVID, unfortunately, where we're going to experience it as a society.
Right.
So I don't think maybe, I don't think it could have been avoided entirely or maybe prevented entirely. But what I do think could have been prevented is the severity of COVID. That's where I think public health started to become popular after COVID happened. I think if people were actually kind of engaged with it before COVID, then we wouldn't have had as severe as of a response. So say, for example, one of the things that I really care about, some of my like last semester research is focused on the impact of non-communicable diseases. So that's your chronic diseases, your type 2 diabetes, your heart disease, the effects of obesity, things like that on human life and how we end up having it and how we can have policies and programs in place to prevent it. And we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But one of the things that I think about specifically is, let's say in the Bahamas specifically, statistics say that about 75% of people have non-communicable diseases right now, or that they will die from a non-communicable disease. And that mimics the global trend as well. So it's not just in the Bahamas. But if you have a population that's already burdened with these diseases, when you get COVID, if you are already susceptible to those diseases, the disease could be more severe for you. And you would have more of an adverse impact. And we kind of saw a lot of that during the pandemic. So we had a lot more deaths that if people, all of us, I'm not saying you people, I'm saying all of us, if we were in a healthier state, as like humans individually, maybe even if we did contract COVID, the experience may not have been as drastic. So I kind of think about prevention from that aspect. Like if we were physically healthier or mentally healthier, then when the disease came, we may have been able to engage with it, or thinking about it from a hospital level. Like if our health system was in more of a healthier place, than when we get a disease of that burden
True.
coming towards us, then we might be in a better position to be able to combat it. So COVID
Mm,
itself in its entirety, no, because I think we'll always have threats, whether it's unfortunately a communicable disease like COVID, hurricane like Hurricane Dorian that we had in 2019, because of
right.
climate change, just the way the
Mm,
world is going, you're always going
mm,
to have some sort of some. But
right.
what we can do is work on how can we prevent the depth of the burden of what we'll experience, through ensuring that us as individuals and our communities are the healthiest versions of themselves. And when I say
Right.
healthy, I mean physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, not
Right.
just physically.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful
So,
answer.
thank you.
Beautiful answer. See, this is this is why you're good at what you do.
Other people
And
may disagree with me, but that's just my
that
opinion.
and that's her professional opinion, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Just so we can make that very clear. And so I just kind of wanted to grab like a kind of soundbite from that. What I also saw in research is just like, with public health, you mentioned communities, right? And like one of the examples that they kind of presented was this idea of like, okay, public health is also this idea of like, okay, um, like obviously prevention, right? But also like setting up things in different like different areas within a country to prevent certain diseases. So whether that be like setting up like let's say a super value in X area, so the people in that area have access to clean food and clean water, so that they are less likely to get sick from not eating the proper foods and vegetables, all those different things. And I bring that up because obviously we mentioned public health is about prevention, but I wanted your take on like how we responded to COVID, right? And I didn't think about this until I actually did a little bit of research. But I remember in 2020, everywhere you look, there was some level of access to vaccinations if you want to get vaccine, and they were like different, and obviously they were free. And now that I understand a little bit about public health, that was a public health initiative, right? So can you kind of tell me about how you think the country, like we as the Bahamas, responded to it? And if you could have done, well, not if you could have done, but like, was there anything you think we could have also added on top of that? Obviously, we gave public access for every single person if they wanted to get vaccinated, but also, just we gave out information as well. So, do you think there was, in your professional opinion, would you have added anything that could have been helpful during such a rough time in the world?
Yeah. I hope this question is not a conflict of interest, because I was working for the Bahamas government at the time of the
You good?
COVID.
Speak your mind. Speak your mind. I want Karissa. That's fine.
I hope it's not biased per se, but I think there's more that we could have done, but I also know that the Bahamas did the best with what they could
Absolutely.
because of what was happening. Like nobody
Nobody
knew
knew.
what to do, where to go. Nobody had any research on this.
Like for
Nobody
six
knew
months.
what to rely on. Nobody
Mhm.
knew where this was going. And like we could only follow what we saw from other countries, but then it was also kind of hard because you're trying to scale it down to fit your own country. So like
Mm.
a lot of times we were following a lot of policies and guidelines from the CDC, but
Mhm.
if you compare to the Bahamas to America, like you can't, because they're just so different in so many ways. So yeah, you
Two
can take
different
the
places.
science from it, but
Mhm.
the intervention may be applied differently because you have a totally different culture, you have a totally different people group, you have a totally
Yeah.
different everything. So I really, and I was behind the scenes. I was watching the decision makers make the decisions. I was sitting in the room with them when they were thinking about it.
Mhm.
A lot of times I was just responsible for taking the meeting notes. So I would literally like type what people were thinking.
Yeah.
So considering all of that, I would say that I think the Bahamas really did their best with what they could. They fought to get the equipment, the PPE, like the personal protective equipment. They stayed on top of research. We
Mhm.
would meet daily, 7 days a week for months, hours.
Wow.
that was just the agency that I was at. Like I knew different agencies were doing different things. At the time, it was like a fight, an international fight for supplies. So you're literally
Yeah, it
competing against
was different
to get
countries.
supplies,
Yeah.
vaccines. And the Bahamas was like really upfront in the fight. They had hired or they brought back Dr. Dal Regis as a consultant, and she's like our top public health professional. So they really did their best. I know some people were upset about, some of the restrictions with like the food store hours and the food store
Yeah.
times,
And the curfew as well.
all
I
of that
forgot
stuff.
about that.
The
Yeah.
curfew, yeah, some of it was pretty rough. But again, like if you don't know what you're facing, you have to be prepared for any
Anything.
outcome.
Yeah.
So I think that they were making decisions as they went along, and things were susceptible to change. They tried to update the public as much as they could. They tried to bring like influencers to share messages. Like they
Mhm.
really tried.
Yeah.
So I would say that they did their best with what
Absolutely.
they have, but also
Mhm.
recognizing like there's always room for growth. And me personally, my heart is always in health promotion and behavior specifically. That's my specific concentration in, or my, I guess, specialization, if you'll call it, in my
Sure.
MBH journey.
Mhm.
And so, with that in mind, I would still say there was a lack of, we need to focus on how we can help people stay physically healthy and stay mentally healthy in these
Mm.
lockdowns.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lack of like promotional programs in that regard from a governmental response.
Mm.
People were doing their own individual things. Like, I remember I was meeting on Zoom and doing workouts on Zoom with people,
Yeah.
but like from a governmental scale, I think that's where we could have
Yeah.
maybe done a
And
little better.
I agree. And and I mean, first off, great answer. But
Kind.
yeah, I think that was such a hard time for every single person. Like, I think the world can agree, like everyone was just kind of going through it, especially in that first like 6 months when we had
Mhm.
no idea what was happening. Like 2020, the world just shut down, right? And for you and me and kind of like the younger generation, like that's the first time, and maybe even the older generation as well, that was the first time we experienced something like that. So to not even know what you're facing and battling in those first initial months before we kind of knew what was happening, was definitely scary, right? And so I
Mhm.
think I could definitely agree with you. Like, we did the best that we absolutely could with the information that was provided to us, and hey, we came out on the other side. So that's a beautiful thing as well. Um,
Mhm.
and so, listen, I love talking about this public health. And so I gotta ask one more question, not a more kind of current one that I was kind of like thinking of as you talked about. So, like you said, public health covers kind of like how I look at life, right? The physical, the mental, the spiritual, also the emotional as well, right? Um, with our country right now, and sad to say, and obviously we've been seeing all the posts everywhere, the Bahamas dangerous, all these different things, and sadly we're experiencing so much crime right now, and just so many sadness happening in our country. Um, what do you think we could do to, I don't, I would like to say that we could eliminate it, but I don't know if I can be truthful in that statement. But what are some things we could do to really tackle, like, I think of it as like a kind of like the mental health crisis in the Bahamas, or like, how can we get to a point where a lot of our communities are more mentally stable? How can we, like, we could get people to like talk instead of fight and choose violence? Like, what can we do um, to give people that space to get to a point where they're more mentally healthy, because
Mhm.
I think we could be doing some things better, and I think it is something that we need to invest in. Like, what do you think behind that? Like, what are something where we could create a better Bahamian society, for our future kids in the future? Like, I want to raise a family here. I'm sure you want to raise one in the future. So what do you think we could do to kind of tackle that?
Mhm. To create a mentally healthy Bahamas,
Yeah,
is that what
absolutely.
that
Yeah, yeah.
specific focus on reducing crime or just generally mentally healthy?
Well,
Or I guess the two go
I
hand in hand.
I guess kind of the two go hand in hand in this case. Like, how I think if we have a more mentally healthier country, then I think that could in turn like maybe reduce some of the crime that we're experiencing. you know?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree. So the first thing I would say is that we as a country have to come up, and I'm not saying this is the government, like we all have responsibility in doing this. So
Yes.
I'll take ownership for the future of our country.
Right.
So one of the things that I would say is that we have to come up with creative ways to reduce the stigma around like a negative mental health experience. So a lot of
Mm.
people, they hear therapy and they say, I'll never do that. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
interested in that. Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to talk to somebody for? Like, I could talk to you. Like, when you, at least in my experiences, most times when I engage with Bahamians, my age, younger, older, everyone's kind of like anti-mental health, or
Mm.
mental health carries this negative stigma. Like you just say, oh, well, this person just needs to be in silence. Silence is where all the crazy people are. Like that's not true. So we
Mm.
really need to step away from that kind of stigma, and we have to come up with creative and culturally sensitive ways to do that. Our
Right.
culture is very unique. And so when we come up with these ideas, we just can't be like, okay, well, the US did this, so let's try it for us. But we have to
Mhm.
say, well, how can we adapt this to some of the challenges that our specific culture is facing?
Yeah.
We also have to make mental health programming
Mm.
more accessible and more cost efficient.
Right.
I think I looked into the price of therapy once, and I think one session was like $250 or something crazy, like for
Wow.
one. So there has to be a way where, okay, I understand therapists and other psychotherapists and psychologists, they have to make their coin, and I'm not mad at you for that. That's
Absolutely.
the way you make your living. But
Mhm.
we also have to say, like, okay, well, how can we do some community programs where we gather everybody together and we have somebody licensed and trained to talk it out, right? Or to help people come up with strategies that can help them be the mentally healthiest versions of themselves. And then a
Mm.
third thing I think that we also have to consider too is education. So I had heard someone say recently on a podcast that I was listening to, if you want your future to change in the country, or if you want your society to change, one of the things that you have to do is you have to educate the kids, because the kids are going to then
Mm.
grow up, and then these kids will grow up and become the change makers that you want to see. If you're trying
Next
to
generation.
make change right where you are with people who are already set in their ways, it's going to be more difficult. So
Right.
we have to start getting into those classrooms. You have to start getting to them Sunday school rooms, and we have to start explaining to people like, God is good. God is always good,
Hmm.
right? But here are some tools that we can use that, yes, we're depending on our faith, and yes, Jesus is everything, and yes, he's the answer to all, but we also want to promote mental health as a part of that. So I
Right.
think a lot of times in our churchy society, we separate like faith and the Lord and church from like mental health. Sometimes the two can't coincide. Oftentimes you only hear about counseling in the church setting through like marital counseling or like premarital counseling. But like
Mm.
no, or like salvation counseling, but like it goes beyond that. Like people are really going through some really tough stuff. And if we don't find or educate ways in our society to like, hey, let's work through this, then
Yeah.
I think our negative stigma is going to continue, and some of the challenges that we're having is going to continue as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. I will say though that I think mental health is an area that I haven't done as much research in my own studies and programming. And so I definitely have some wonderful friends who are way more advanced in that field who I'm sure could give more of a expert opinion than I could, as long as
Yeah.
resources that's available. Um, but I think it's a good question. And I think when we, yeah, like you said, I think once we focus on how can we have a mentally healthy society, then we can also reduce crime. But then crime itself is this whole multifaceted thing
It
too, right?
is. It is.
And there are so many components into crime. And just a brief tangent. Had you heard the voice note of the lady who someone broke into her house
I have
when she
not.
was at home?
I have
So it
not.
was a voice note that this Bahamian lady sent out. I think it was circulating a couple years ago. But basically, the premise of the story is somebody broke into her home and she could kind of hear someone moving around, but she didn't like see them. Um, and when she started like looking around to see who was there, the person was gone. She went outside, she saw a man in her driveway with a gun. And the man was basically explaining to her, like, Miss, I was just about to rob you. But the reason that I stopped, like, I didn't rob you is because there was a time when I went to your church and you served me and my family like food or supplies or something like that. That's the only reason I didn't rob you. So when they got in conversation and she was asking him, like, why were you going to rob me? Like, what's up? He was just explaining how he was experiencing poverty. His light bill had been off for weeks. Like he had kids, he needed to provide for his kids, and he was so desperate, like he was resorting to crime. So sometimes too, we have to look at like, hey, people, like why are people committing crime? Like we have challenges with mental health, but we're also having challenges with poverty. We're also having challenges with people not having accessibility to what they need, people not being able to retain jobs. Like our justice system isn't as just as it should be. Like there's this whole
it's just a lot of factors, right? That kind of play into
we
it.
don't know how to handle conflicts. That's a big part of it too, going back to education. So it's a big question, but not impossible for our generation.
Amen. Wow. That was just a beautiful answer. I don't even have much else to say after that, but I'm just gonna say I agree, and it's not impossible. And I think anything is possible through Christ, and I also think that anything is possible through hard work as well. And so I think through the correct research and through the correct initiatives, I think we can come to solutions. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Listen, Karissa, I got one final question for you, because this conversation has been so riveting and has been better than I expected. I knew this was gonna go well, but this just my expectations are through the roof.
Okay.
And so the last question I want to ask you, and this kind of ties with what we're doing here. This whole thing is about journeys, right? And the journey series, the idea of kind of like, and we walk through your journey. We walk through the England times, walk through the KA times, we walk through even your faith in the KA times, and then you being Taylor, and even you today as a public health master. And so what I want to ask you as the final question, and it's one of those questions you kind of get in we're not really strangers type thing, and so that question would be, if you can tell yourself one thing, your younger version of yourself, the current Karissa where you're at, if you could tell her something, it could be one thing, a stanza, whatever it is, what would you tell her? What would you tell her so that she knows how the future is going to look like? Because right now the Moss future is bright. So what would you tell her?
Your kinds. I would say that young Karissa, don't let your insecurities take control. That's what I would tell her. Too many decisions I made because I allowed insecurity and fear to lead the way. And so I would tell her, just like, be secure in who you are, be secure in your God, be secure in your faith. You've seen him guide you through so many circumstances, so just continue to allow him to lead you and guide you as he promised he would. And don't get sidetracked by your insecurities. That's what I would tell her.
That is so beautiful. Don't get sidetracked by your insecurities. And ladies and gentlemen, that is where we're going to end this lovely, fulfilling, bigger word, adjective that encapsulates this amazing episode of Talking to Myself. Ladies and gentlemen, Karissa Moss. That is her story. Only a very small portion, but we got so much. Karissa, I just want to say thank you once again for taking the time out of your busy schedule, for coming on the show and dropping game every single step of the way. So much game. Is there anything you would like to promote before we close out episode 32 of this Talking to Myself episode? Where can the people find the future ministress of public health?
Wow. Okay. So much things I want to promote. God is good. Read your Bible, pray every day.
Mm-hmm.
Drink your water.
Drink your water. Oh yeah.
Stop eating that salts and sugary high fat foods. Um, Seek being the healthy version of yourself physically,
Mm.
mentally, emotionally,
Mhm.
and spiritually. Um, yeah, and I think in the words of Dave, we move.
We move, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end of this episode. Thank you all so
Dave.
much.
Thank you for the honor. I had a
Oh,
great time.
and thank
Thank
you
you so
to
much.
ladies and gentlemen. We'll
I
see you
appreciate
on the
the
next
time.
one. Karissa, thank you so much. And until we meet again, like she said, y'all, we move. See y'all later. Goodbye.